meeting to order. Did everyone get an opportunity to look at the minutes from December? I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion, questions, changes to the minutes? All those in favor of approving the minutes from the December board meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Oh, it looks like
Financial reports. We are recording?
it's working on it. It's working on it, so at any rate, so you have to use the microphone.
Okay.
One thing that I just wanted to mention about the minutes, it's still got Angela and Adam. I'm gonna talk to Amy over at Public Works. She's the one that's worked on this most. She might have those permissions to change that. I don't have
Okay.
that level of
Right.
clearance,
I think we had
so I
talked
can't.
about that
Right,
Yeah,
before noting it.
so,
So
I didn't get a
it's-
chance to talk to her today, but I asked about it, and so.
Okay.
Hopefully we can get that changed, because I would also like to get Kristen's name changed, to be accurate.
Okay.
And that, I don't know why that never happened, but, at any rate, we'll see. So
I can go
hopefully
by
by
either.
next month, we'll have that stuff fixed.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, okay, so, financials, yes. I split, just because of the way I books, at least the library set of books. I split the city budget into December and January, so, we had the two things in December, after the board meeting that we had, books. And then I've got the January is on the next page, what we've spent so far in January. Yeah. And so that's, oh, good, that include, I think, oh, no, this was done before the Medici payment, but I did do that yesterday. So that'll show up on the next one. Replaced one of the computers and then mainly books and programming. Had a couple of repairs that we had to do, building-wise. And then some yearly subscriptions for software that we went ahead and took care of. So that's the city budget. The memorial miscellaneous, I guess that is in here, because that's where that came out of. So the Medici is out of the memorial miscellaneous. I did include that. I had some posters mounted for display that came from the Smithsonian. That's the $150 to Sturgis Photo and Gifts. So those will go up in February, because our February artist pulled out, so we didn't have anything to put up. So that's going up there. It's called The Bias Inside Us. It's about inherent bias and how we can try to move beyond that. So it's kind of an interesting set of posters that'll go up on the art wall. And then I'll talk about something else that we've got coming too. Other than that, deposit, just sort of the regular, the regular payments for the copier and water in the break room, and then donations to summer reading program, which I'll talk about in a minute. The savings, just moved money over to savings that came in as far as donations, because we're trying to, just keep track of it. So that's where that goes. And then, interest updates. The Duntrust CD is comes up in February, so we'll talk about that in a minute, but I included that just to see where we're gonna be at. We'll have that $7,300 in interest that'll go into savings, and then we'll renew the CD in February. The 5th is when it renews. And then I included the fourth quarter report from the Community Foundation. And our balance is $146,227 in the community foundation, which is really pretty good. Last year and a little bit of the year before, it took a real sharp dive as the market crashed. But it's come back, and I was looking at it from when this fund was started in, I think, 2019 or 2020, if I remember right, is when the Elliots put in the gift. And that was, I think, 130 or 100 and something like that. So it's gone up almost $20,000 in like 5 or 6 years, which is really pretty nice. So it's always good to see that money continuing to grow. I haven't received the letter from them about how much we can either pull out or reinvest yet. Typically, we just reinvest that money. So hopefully that'll be in the next week or so. I imagine that usually comes out. So we'll know what our share of that is. I think that's it for the financials. Do you guys have any questions about that stuff?
Chris, is Medici, is it the same as last year, that $1,350?
Yeah, it's actually $1,300. It was $50 for the wire transfer.
Okay.
So there was a little bit extra in there. I think last year we must have paid by check. I thought we had done a wire transfer last year as well, but apparently not. But we took care of that on Wednesday, or Tuesday, or Monday even. Anyway, that's that.
I'll just get everyone a minute to look over to see if there's any questions or clarifications. Chris, I know the last meeting we talked about the handicap door, and that was going to be
Yes.
fixed. Did he just do that in-house, or did we have to, is
No, they hired somebody because they needed a part, and
that on here?
we didn't pay for that.
Oh, that's why. Okay,
Yeah. That was because I think there were 2 or 3 doors that needed fixed. And
Okay.
so I think the company just came and fixed them all.
all right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
I'll
it's been
second.
moved- It's been moved and seconded. Any questions, concerns? Jim, you're still looking over there? All good. All those in favor of approving the financial report for the month of January signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion approved. All right, director's report.
All right. Our numbers for the beginning of the year are all good. Nothing unusual. It'll be interesting to see, since our reciprocity with Rapid City has ended, how those numbers change, because there were a fair amount of checkouts from Rapid City on Sturgis cards last year. I pulled the numbers, but I don't have them with me. And so we will see the circulation numbers go down a little bit. It'll just depend on how many of those people start interlibrary loaning items from Sturgis or just going without. We've already had, I think, a couple of families from Blackhawk and Somerset that homeschool that would just go get, 40 or 50 books from Rapid that have already done that through us. So we've gotten some pretty big courier deliveries. So we'll see if that continues or if they start using Piedmont for that. We'll see. But anyway, so those numbers will be changing this year.
Have you received any feedback, either way, good, bad, complaints about it?
We still have a few people calling confused about why it went away and not necessarily happy it did. Well, nobody's happy that it did, but yeah, I had a elderly woman call me and talk about how ridiculous it was and that how much better it is in North Dakota where she had lived and in Washington where she had lived and I think Idaho. And it was a long conversation, but I don't think she ever quite understood why it went away, but she just wanted to let me know. that North Dakota does it a lot better than we do. I said, well, okay. I didn't want to say that, well, North Dakota probably doesn't know that you live there or don't live there anymore, which is why you're still able to use Libby from your North Dakota card.
Right.
But at any rate, that's dying down. I think most of the people that were using it regularly have figured out that that's done.
Okay.
So, yeah. Donations, we did have 56, 70, 20 donated was the total for the summer reading program fundraiser. We did get $2,000 yesterday from Rally Charities. So of our $10,000 goal, we're at 76, 70, and 20 cents. So really close. And so we're hoping that we can get to that 10,000 mark, hopefully by the end of spring, and then maybe see if we want to raise the goal a little bit, which would we may be able to do that. Art exhibits. Aspen Grove has a display up right now, downstairs and upstairs. That's great. Same thing they did last year, where they have high school kids meet with residents and they talk about stuff, and then they so that's cool. That'll be up through the end of this month. And then in February, like I said, the artist that was going to be there pulled out. So we have these Bias and Situs posters, but then also the Rushmore Music Festival, which is based in Rapid City, has something they call the Painted Violin Project, which is a way to kind of get the word out about what they do, and it's a fundraiser for them. And so they have a bunch of old violins that they gave to local artists to decorate, paint, and whatever. And so they have this tree they built that they hang all these from. And you can bid on them if you want to purchase them, but it's mainly to give people awareness about the festival and what they do. And that, I think, is going to be here for a couple of weeks in February. And it'll be down on the first floor right in front of the new books. It'll be in that area. So I'm hoping that's going to happen. And then in March, Sturgis Brown High School will have their display. So that's what's going on with art. All the programming and meetings are all pretty much the same as usual. It seems that the new city administrator is fond of the room, and it makes for a great place to hold meetings. So that's good.
Great room.
Yeah, happy to see that. And as far as facility updates, the kitchen sink had a little leak that I thought was from the dishwasher drain. But when I went and explored it a little more, the trap actually had a crack in it, and that's what was leaking. How that cracked, I'm assuming it was just bad to begin with. But anyway, so I got that replaced this week, so that's, everything down there is still dry, so that's good. It was just a slow leak that, we hadn't really noticed, but we got that fixed. We've always had problems with the sink and the staff bathroom in that back area, because it would always freeze when it gets really cold. So what Judd did is, because where those water lines run, you can't really get to them. They're between a cinder block wall and drywall. So to do anything with those, you would have to actually rip out the cabinets above the sink and the sink, and rip out that wall and then wrap that line, at least as far as you could go. Judd thinks it actually goes under the stairs before it goes someplace else. So there's limited amount that we can do with that. What his solution was to cut a hole in the drywall underneath the sink, and it's about that big. And then we have a portable heater that's there. And then when it gets cold, we turn it on, and that sends hot air up into that space. And over the past cold weather, nothing froze up. So that's at least a temporary fix for that problem. And so we hope that'll keep working. It would happen every year, so it's kind of surprising that the pipes have not actually burst yet. And so the idea is that if we can keep it from happening, any of that wear on the pipes isn't going to get any worse. So hopefully that's good. And then the community room faucet had real low flow. Judd had cleaned it out. It seems like there was a bad valve in the faucet, so he just went ahead and replaced the faucet. And so that's better now. So little things, but we got them taken care of, so that's good. Other stuff as we're working on building the Friends group and getting that going, I'm anyway putting together a list of grants that the library can't apply for because we're a government institution, but that a nonprofit can. So once the Friends group gets its nonprofit status, then we can start applying for those grants, and hopefully that'll give us another income source. And so we're working on that. We have the bylaws written. We just need to actually have our first meeting and ratify the bylaws, elect officers, and then I'll be able to go ahead and start filling out the paperwork for the IRS. Rapid City, and I thought this was interesting. Last year, Rapid City's library tried to get a grant to study whether consortium-wide reciprocity was feasible. And the consortium, the Black Hills Library Consortium, is Rapid City, Piedmont, us, Spearfish, Lee Deadwood, Custer, Edgemont, Hermosa. Anyway, so by having that consortium, we save a ton of money on costs for our software system that we use for cataloging and checking out and all that stuff. And we can share costs other ways as well with Libby and stuff. Anyway, an idea in that group for a long time has been to have reciprocity among all the libraries. So if you have a Sturgis card, you can go anywhere and check out a book, which you can't right now. We had reciprocity with Rapid City, but they ended that at the end of last year. Well, they didn't get the grant last year. They were approved to submit an application to get a grant to study reciprocity this year. So they're going to be filling out that application to see if they're then actually invited to, or if they get that grant, then they will see if reciprocity is available, is workable. So we'll see how that goes. That's probably going to be a year or two process if it's going to happen. So we'll see. But so that's that. Last meeting we talked about the state library budget cut. That's gotten a lot of press. It is going to committee. The education committee is going to discuss it on Tuesday morning. Does anybody want to go to Pier for a meeting on Tuesday morning? No? Okay.
I would, if I could get
Well, I'm still trying to decide if I can swing it or not. I can't go on Monday, so I would have to leave Tuesday morning. So we'll see. But essentially this would, if this cut goes through, then courier service would go away. So interlibrary loan would have to be all through the mail, which would be, we wouldn't be able to do it. The state library pays our courier, I think it was $25,000 a year. So if the consortium wants that to continue, if the state library budget is cut, that means we're going to have to, amongst the consortium libraries, come up with $25,000. I don't know how we would be able to do that. I don't know. I don't know where that money would come from. And that also means that the courier service would end at the end of June. So if we wanted it to continue, then we would have to come up with half a year's worth of, unless they've been paid up front. I don't know how that works, but we would have to try to figure out how to come up with that money consortium-wide, and that'll be a good question. It would also get rid of the state databases, which get about 3 million hits a year. It would exclude us from receiving any federal money because the federal money is tied to state funding. So the $1 million cut that the governor had proposed becomes like a $3.6 million cut. It would, it would really kind of destroy how libraries work in the state. Because the other aspect of that is there's a bill to get rid of the state library board. And I think that was tied to this cut in funding. So if the funding gets restored, I assume that the cut to the state library board, or the cutting the state library board would then go away, but I don't know. That's kind of secondary at this point to the funding. So we'll know probably next week what's happened with that. I know that today the education scholarship was moved to the 41st day. So that may free up some of that money, because that was $4 million that was going to go to that, and that has been, I guess, kind of taken out of the equation this year. So we'll see. We'll see how things go. We're cautiously optimistic that enough people realize it would be just a pretty incredible cut to the services that we can offer. Well, and not just us, but every library in the state would be in the same situation. So if you haven't written to your congressman, please do that. Show up at the Cracker Barrel on Saturday. Francie asked me to be there to answer any questions, and I'll have some handouts for as well. Also, some stuff that's not on the board report but that I wanted to mention, and I guess Aaron could talk about this a little bit too, but the city is starting essentially a salary study to see how our salaries relate to other institutions. And I was going to ask Jim if he could just kind of talk about the genesis of this briefly, so that we're aware.
I'll start and turn it over to Aaron. When we, on the Legal and Finance Committee, when we brought this up initially, it had to do with the police union. We dealt with the city union fairly as much as we could, and they agreed, and everything was okay. But as I understand it from the chief, there were just a handful of union members that were not going to accept anything that we did, and we finally made, after 2 or 3 back and forths, we made what we said was our last offer, and they refused. And so one of those last things was to do this salary study, so that we had some job descriptions. And again, I've not dealt with this enough, and Aaron, you are aware, so I'll turn it to you, but I'll just say this, that it seemed to me it was very relatively unfair from the union perspective, knowing where we are financially and all the things that we had done. They weren't ready to accept.
Yeah, and also looking at this issue, I mean, it has legs. It goes back even a couple of years. You know, even when I was on council, we were trying to do something internal using our staff, trying to do a salary survey, you know, across the region to be able to see where we stacked up against other municipalities. But, you know, we were always pretty lean on our full-time force, and we always had something else that came up that kind of bumped that down the road. So what the council right now is decided, hey, the buck stops here. We need to get this done. And so we did enter into a contract, an agreement with Condrey Associates. And they've done this for other communities. They've had a lot of experience. We just did a Zoom call with them this morning. And I mean, Jan was probably been doing this for 40. She started back in the 1970s, worked for a municipality where she ended up being the director of human resources, where they had thousands and thousands of employees. And then all the other folks too. So they got tons of experience to be able to do this. And so we have a questionnaire that we kicked out today, and that goes to all of our employees. And they will fill those questionnaires out. They give it to their first line supervisor, and the first line supervisor has some responsibility to fill out some stuff. And then it goes over to the department head to just review and validate it. And then all that will come to me as a city administrator, and we'll roll that up. The expectations on their part is we'll get that to them on the 18th of February. So we're trying to get that to me on the 14th, which is on a Friday, and because I think that next weekend is there's a holiday there. So we got a lot of work to do, and then once they get that information, then they'll start setting up interviews. And they'll interview probably about 50% of our workforce, asking some follow-on questions and whatnot. And so based on the information that we're providing them in terms of their job title, what their salary is right now, they'll start doing the analysis. And then here by the end of May, they'll give us something, a deliverable. So we'll be able to have an understanding where the city of Sturgis stacks in terms of our salaries and compensation and everybody else. So that's a great feeder for as we go into negotiations with our union for 2026. And not to mention just, it's something we've been trying to do for probably half a decade, is to really have a better understanding of where we sit right now. So this is our opportunity to kind of see what that is. And then I know from talking with the mayor and listening to the council, I mean, we're still wrapping up, trying to determine where our financials are, close out 24. We've had a reduced budget for 2025 just to make sure we have some resources. And then, as we go into 2026, we'll see what's available to be able to maybe meet those objectives of whatever that study, the results are. So yeah, good to see that off the ground and moving.
All right, thanks, guys. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that all comes together. Another thing I wanted to mention, we have applied for at least one grant. I know there's a couple other grants that I think we're looking at as a way to supplement the part-time staff cut that we had this year. I know with some of the money that's come in for summer reading program, we'll be able to use that for Cindy's help. So that'll then free up some money that we can move toward Merman. So I'm fairly confident we can come pretty close to that 4,000 that was cut through donations and be able to bring them back up to the level that we were shooting for. So hopefully we'll be able to hang on to both of them, which is the goal. So yeah, like I said, I'm fairly confident we're going to make some headway. We already have made a little bit of headway, but so that's good. Do you guys have any questions about what's going on for me?
How much more were their hours cut by Merman and?
Well, it was, I can give you a little bit of information on that because I was just doing some calculations today. Last year they ended up actually working more hours than was budgeted because we were given some numbers that turned out to be not quite right. So they actually ended up making more than they should have. But this year, right now, we're looking at Merman typically had close to 20 hours a week. She's down to 12, and Cindy was at about 12 hours a week. She's down to 8.5. So
significant.
So yes, yeah. I mean, it's we were typically at 18,000 for the past few years, and it got removed, but then it got brought back up to 14. So we're 4,000 shy, which would mean an extra. For Merman, it'd be like an extra 175 hours if we get that 4,000 back. For Cindy, it'd be another 126 hours. So, yeah,
Okay.
fairly significant. So that's why we're working hard to figure out how to get this to work out.
That will impact programming, especially when we start looking at.
Well, and also, a lot of what Merman does is processing of new books and repair of books. And so
If Sierra has to do that.
somebody's, as far as preparing the books, there's nobody else that
Nobody
does
else to do it,
that.
right.
So some of us would have to learn how to do that.
Right.
But then, yeah, Cindy's main job is helping out with programming when she's not, and doing front desk stuff, but mainly programming. So, yeah. So Sierra then would have to pick up all of that extra. Yeah. Which then you worry about, your employees getting burnt out, and we want to avoid that as much as we can. So, yeah. Okay.
For next week.
Yes.
Do you know what time on Tuesday? The
8:30.
Education Committee? 8:30?
Yeah.
And that'll be probably aired on the SDBP?
It should be, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Somebody actually specifically thought that it would be important for Cricket to show up. I won't say who it was, but
I'll ride along with you.
they thought, well, okay, if I go,
Let me know. I have more
Yeah.
time now that I'm retired.
they thought it would be more impactful having a library board member there than a librarian, because, librarians were a dime a dozen. But the chair of the library board, that's
I got some
got
power.
some weight.
Okay.
So, anyway, I'll let you know. I
Pretty
just,
central, or is that mountain?
8:30 Central, so
Central.
I'd have to leave, I know I'd have to leave at 4.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that's that. And we don't have any old business, but I guess I could let you say that as
Yeah, no, that's
chair.
okay. Thank you for the report. Any other questions for Chris? Thank you. And yeah, no unfinished business, so we can move on to new business.
And there are just a couple of things. One is that we had a first meeting of the Friends Group to go over the bylaws and see what we needed to change. And it was suggested that we ask the library board for some seed money to pay for the application for the 501c3, which is $275 for the short form, which I think we're eligible to do. Otherwise, it's $600. But $275 for that, and then also possibly some money so that we could actually open a bank account. So $100 or something, and whether that was a loan or just kind of money that was moved over as a placeholder, should be sufficient. I don't know if we need to take action on that, because it's probably going to be another couple of weeks before we are able to have a Friends meeting. But I guess if you wanted to discuss that and make a decision. Terry was the one that brought it up, saying that the library board could pay for that, or ask the library board to pay for it. So we'd be looking at about $375. To put that in perspective, we're getting $7,000 off of the DunTrust CD. So there's some money there if you guys wanted to do that.
Thoughts, discussion?
I mean, I would think that would be absolutely appropriate.
Did you say so moved? So moved. Okay, we have, it's been moved.
I'll second.
Jim beach
Pick
to
one.
it.
Yep, Jim's got it. All right, it's been moved and seconded for some seed money of $375 to support the Friends of the Sturgis Public Library for their application for the 501c3 status and to open up a bank account. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
All right. The next thing is that I already mentioned the DunTrust CD is up on February 6th. I've looked around, interest rates, long-term interest rates are just horrible right now. But First Interstate, where we have the CD right now, has a 7-month CD that's at 3.83%. Other banks that I looked at, none are much higher than about 4% for the same amount of time. Anytime ideally we would tuck this thing away for a few years so we didn't have to worry about it, but it goes down to like 2% if you want a couple year length. So the best that they can do anyway is 3.83% for 7 months, which would give us an additional $7,600. The investment board has not met, which is Janine Short and Cricket and myself. But I guess if you guys wanted to approve or give us the permission to invest to renew it, I should say, to renew the CD however best, that'd be great. Otherwise, it has to be done within, I think, 10 days. Otherwise, it just automatically gets reinvested.
And automatically at what length and what rate?
I think it would automatically be at the 7-month.
Oh, Okay, at the 3.83.
Because right now it was an 8-month, if I remember right, was the best rate. So it just renews at the current
Okay,
length of
But
time.
I don't have all the facts on that. The only thing I'd suggest, we did get money at my request when I went to Black Hills
Right.
Federal,
Right.
when we had the request for the flooring, and they gave us the money. I don't
Yes.
know if we get money from First Interstate or not.
First
Prob-
Interstate has in the past
Yes,
given
and
us
so
a
I
little
only
bit.
bring up that if they, at least that'd be something we should look at. If we wanted to go back some other time to ask for more money,
Yeah.
it's nice to have done business with.
to explore what their rates are, or have you done that
Their rate
already?
was 4, I think 4.1 for a 6-month, I believe it was. So everybody's in the ballpark. And it's just a matter of, do we want to, we did move it 2 years ago for a year and then brought it back. I mean, it's a little bit of a hassle to keep bouncing it around from bank to bank is my thought, but it's your decision. So, yeah, I always look at what the credit union has as far as rates, and yeah,
It's a good point, Jim. I mean, if it's somebody that has supported us, that we definitely look at that. Discussion more,
And again,
Questions on that?
I'm not a fan of First Interstate Bank, and so I would, I'd move it somewhere local. And First Interstate has done a good job in Sturgis. And I know the president, I think that's all good, but from a company standpoint, I think we should do business with people from our own community and state. That's my input, that's all.
no.
Yeah. No, it's worthwhile
What does that look like
in
if
terms of,
we would not renew that from them, from First Interstate, and, and then just move the funds over to the other, to a different bank? What does that look like?
yeah.
Chris?
Basically, when the CDs due, I get a cashier's check. I take it over to First Interstate, or I would take it over to the credit union and deposit it in a CD. And yeah,
why did
you and
we-
I have to sign some papers.
Why did we move it again in the first, what was that?
We moved it to,
Northern Hills?
no, we moved it, what's the bank over?
Was it Wells Fargo?
Wells
we
No,
moved
it
to?
wasn't Wells Fargo.
First
it's-
National.
First National, yeah, is where it got moved to, because they gave us,
A better rate.
it was quite a bit higher than First Interstate was able to give us. And it was just enough that it was like, yeah, we can't really say no.
And then when it equaled out, we went back to
Then,
First
yeah,
Interstate?
then when that one came due, it was, I think First Interstate actually gave us a little bit better rate. So it moved back over, yeah.
And so what did you say that at Black Pearl, what was the rate and the
I
length
think it was 4.2
for 6 months?
for, I think it was a 9-month. Yeah. Everybody has different, and I could call them and ask them, I mean, I would probably do that anyway, call and ask, since it's such a substantial amount, can they do any better?
And so what,
February 5th is when it
February 5th?
comes due, so that's next week. So I can call tomorrow and ask.
And I could certainly make a motion to do with keeping in mind Jim's comments and the investment possibility, like the rate, and suggest that, you guys make the best decision for
Yeah.
the community and the money.
And I will say that when we did move it over, Jeanine Short's on the investment
Yeah.
committee, and she didn't push First Interstate at all. She was, this is the best rate we can give you, and that was the end of it. So,
Right.
so yeah, there's no pressure that way at all. So, for whatever that's worth. But, yeah, so
So what does that motion look like? I motion to trust that you'll do.
it would be to allow the investment committee to
I move that we allow the investment committee to
Make the best choice.
make the best choice
Okay.
for the funds.
All All right, it's been moved and seconded that the investment committee, that we trust the investment committee to make the best choice after we've done some more research on other rates for Black Hills Federal and other banks. We will definitely email out the information next week once we hear.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, any other discussion on that before we vote? That we're going to trust the investment committee? Who's all on that committee again?
You, me, and Janine.
I'm trustworthy, you guys. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
There you have it.
All right. Okay.
Before you go into executive, would this be appropriate time for me to make a few comments before?
Sure. And actually,
Yes.
we have no executive session this
Okay.
time around.
Okay.
That's just a placeholder.
Okay, that's a lot of executive work there.
You bet.
Okay,
Yes, please.
all right. Well, first of all, I'm just starting the third week of my assignment as a city administrator, and the mayor said, "Hey, Aaron, I want you to hit the ground running," and it's been running. It's been some long days, long weeks, but I would tell you there's no other place I'd rather be and anything I'd rather be doing than what I'm doing right now. I got great teammates. We live in a great community. We got a great future ahead of us, and I'm looking forward to being a part of the team, hoping to make that a reality. As we go forward, on the budget side of it, obviously, listening to what Chris was saying, and you guys took some hits this year, and at the end of the day, it's the elected officials will make that determination. But what I've talked to the department heads and the directorates is, we're going to start looking at the 2026 budget here relatively soon from a full-time staff perspective. And what I've asked them to do, and that's where I bring it up to you, because it looks like you guys are, a participant in what those budget requirements are. And so as they start looking at their budgets, what I've asked them to do is kind of think about it in an unconstrained environment. Here's what we would like to have. Now, we know that you're not always going to get everything that you want, but if you think about it from an unconstrained environment and then prioritize. And so at some point, we understand what the needs are. We understand why they're needed, what the impacts are, the positives and the negatives. And as the elected officials start deliberating and receiving all this information, we have X amount of money to be able to allocate and appropriate to across all our different departments. At least you have an opportunity to be able to be a part of that conversation, shape what the requirements are, what those impacts are, and then if that number is, you want X amount of dollars to be able to meet all those requirements, the essential things, the nice to have things, that's great. But if the money is less than that, well, then you'll have an idea about what you can prioritize. But the intent here is just to be able to understand what the needs are. And the elected officials will determine what those priorities are. But the more we can bring to the table, the more information that we can bring, and understanding what the opportunities are and maybe what some negative impacts are, I think would be helpful as we spend some time in really deliberating through that budget and making sure that we're making good decisions that meet the needs of the city of Sturgis. So I'm here to help. I'd like to meet your expectations, Cricket, as the chairperson here, and if I'm not, please let me know. If there's things I can do better that I can help you out with or whatever. I'm a teammate here. Maybe not an official friends of the library, but definitely a friend of the library. So with that, I'll open up to any questions that you may have.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that gives, thank you for the heads up for even just the library board, that we can kind of look at what's essential, and even getting feedback from the staff, I think, to help us with those priorities that we have, that if there is those cuts, that we're not shocked by that, and doing the best we can to prioritize what we really need to maintain. So we appreciate the heads up and being transparent with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we get that information, I'll socialize that with the elected officials so they have time to digest it. And at some point, we'll start doing budget hearings. So, the library board or Chris is in front of the mayor and the councilman and kind of, here's what my budget is. It won't be coming from me. It'll be coming from you guys.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Yes, thank you, sir. All right.
It's Aaron now, Cricket.
Yes. You're always gonna be sir. It's like that old school teacher.
I was wondering if you wanted us to call you Colonel.
No.
I don't
Call me
see
when my
anyone
wife calls
else.
me private. And you're moving slow, Aaron.
I don't see anyone else that wants to come before the board, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, thank you, everybody, and we are, I don't have my calendar in front of me. What are we at, Chris, for
The next one is
February?
26th of February
February 26th.
is the next one, yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Yep. Title 14 of the South Dakota statutes is all the library laws.
Is that, oh boy, I could
Yeah.
use that. I don't have to use melatonin that night, huh?
Well,
Just-
right. It'll put you